Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsey Moppert here, joined by our NFL and Bills insider, Vic Carucci. Vic, we have a lot to discuss as it was a bit of a wild week last week, and then, of course, preview the challenge that is to come for this Buffalo's Bills team. So let's start back in that Kansas City game this past weekend. I think the biggest storyline coming out of that game from all of the distractions the week ahead was just the fact that this team was able to rally around their head coach, Sean McDermott, after, the comments that had been released, 4 years ago in 2019. So what does that say to you? Terry Pagula standing in the back of that celebration video, Brandon Beane giving him the game ball, and you can hear his players in the background saying, we got your back. What does that say to you?
I think it will go down as one of the most important victories and moments of Sean McDermott's time with the Buffalo Bills because it was galvanizing. It was the clearest sign, I think, of all the years that he has been their head coach of how much these players, how much this team, organization, everything backs Sean McDermott, believes in him. And at his most trying time as a head coach, at least he would tell you that there was this rise in their play to win a critical game to help save their season against one of the best teams, the defending Super Bowl champs. And I think that made such a loud statement about their belief in the man. They played well because obviously that's their job, but it was bigger than that. And Sean McDermott could feel it. And I think the bonding, as if there had been any question about it before, and some people had it even prior to the story coming out about the ill-advised speech. And of course, what was happening on the field was raising questions. Now, playing as well as they did and giving him that game ball and supporting him so demonstratively, I honestly think whatever happens from here on out, we have no doubt about what Sean McDermott means to these players and to this organization.
Vic, I also feel like that's something that just kind of moves the vibe of the locker room in these guys. And just looking ahead at this final stretch, that's what you need. You need your players to come together and, support your head coach in this scenario. So now moving forward, obviously that was a survival game in Kansas City. They needed that win to keep their playoff hopes alive. But now, week 15 of the season, there are 6 teams that are 7-6 right now in that wild card hunt. And so this weekend, now the Bills are going to be hosting the 10-3 Dallas Cowboys. And, it may not be as much of a survival game as, that Chiefs game was, but what kind of statement can this team make with a win over the Cowboys on Sunday?
Well, a week ago, they beat one of the best teams in their conference, and that certainly made them more relevant than they had been, I think, before that game. Now they can enhance that relevance by beating one of the best teams in the league, one of the teams that has one of the 3 teams that has the best record in the NFL and has players that, including Dak Prescott, that are being viewed as some of the top in the league, a very talented roster. And Dak Prescott is talked about as an MVP. When we look at the Cowboys, you can't avoid the history between the Bills and the Cowboys. Those 2 Super Bowls they played a long time ago, but a lot of the fans of the Bills know what also it means to win a game against them. Regular season game, yeah, but it would, I think, tell the rest of the league that the Bills are to be reckoned with as a legit contender, which I think they've already elevated to that point. That's one thing. And the other thing is the momentum that it gives them. A momentum that began with that big win against the Jets. They have rebounded from that lousy 6-game stretch, and you beat the Cowboys and win 2 in a row and beat 2 credible clubs from that 2-0 stretch. Yeah, I think now the inner confidence that it would build and the outer respect that it would have are big.
And you look at the Cowboys and just what they've been able to accomplish recently. Their last game, their last loss was actually the game in Philly. And then their most recent win was, of course, again, demolishing Philly, that time at home. So they've definitely gone on a stretch, I believe 5 games at this point. So it would definitely be a statement. And as you mentioned, a couple of players really at the peak of just play right now in the season. But now looking at the Bills and, what's been kind of overlaying their season all year, injuries on their defense. And now you have 2 more guys that were just ruled out earlier this morning, safety Micah Hyde, and then you have AJ Epinesa. They were both officially ruled out for Sunday's game. And I'm just wondering, what kind of impact do you think that those 2 guys will have come Sunday?
I would say it's not great timing that the Bills add 2 more key players to their defensive injury list. It was already a long list, and the fact that it's gotten longer and the fact that it includes a defensive lineman in Epinesa who's having a career year, who's been so disruptive as he was against the Chiefs as well, and then add Micah Hyde, who is really the quarterback of the defense, who keeps everything in order. Missing that piece additionally on the back end when you're talking about facing Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and this dynamic passing game, this team that can score so many points and score them quickly. Yeah, that's going to be a problem. I mean, this is an offense that can get on a roll against the best defenses, the healthiest defenses. So the challenge is going to be there for the Bills to find ways to slow down Prescott and slow down that passing game and not let the Cowboys gain control or gain the early lead that I think could be so difficult for this defense to handle. If they get that help from the offense early on, the Bills offense, that's probably where you can offset some of those missing players from injury.
So, Vic, you kind of touched on my next topic, just keys to this game for the Bills. And you mentioned a couple there, but now, that you add in those injuries in this game, who, in your opinion, do you feel like needs to step up the most in their place?
I think this could end up being a really big game for Stefon Diggs. Now, that isn't exactly a bulletin, but he has been a guy whose numbers have not been strong recently. He has been more a part of the offense and one of the cogs rather than kind of that main weapon that we know him to be. The reason I think he'll step up is because this Cowboy team relies heavily on man coverage. That's the Dan Quinn way with this scheme. And I think a guy like Diggs is going to have a lot of success with that. And yes, they've got Stephon Gilmore. They have some good defenders who can make it difficult for Josh Allen to find open targets, but he's going to find Diggs and he's going to find his other receivers, I think, to the tune of a pretty big day. The fact that the Bills use a lot of motion to keep a defense off balance. And yes, the Cowboys have a lot of defensive speed, but Allen is that freaky guy who can run for being as large as he is, who can run himself out of trouble and run himself 2 big plays.
And I think it's just about time that Diggs has this game, because it's starting to get noticeable, how teams are really able to shut him out. And McDermott touched on it this morning in his presser. Diggs talked about it this week and everything. But Vic, now I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and look at the bigger picture. This is the final playoff push, 4 games left in the regular season. And for the Bills, as I mentioned earlier, they are one of 6 teams that are sitting at 7-6. That will soon change here this weekend, Saturday, Sunday. But on Sports Talk Live this past week, Hall of Famer Bill Cowher did make a really good point that I just want to bring up. Saying that, half of those teams, when you're looking at it, are working with a backup quarterback. And then you have Josh Allen, who he says, let's maybe not rely completely on Josh Allen and let him put his little superhero cape on. But, if he's going to take anyone, he's going to take Josh Allen and the Bills. What were your thoughts when, he brought up that point and just kind of looking at that wild card race as a whole?
I think it's true that when you compare the Bills with the teams that are kind of grouped into that category of just on the outside of the playoffs or even near the bottom end of the teams that are in the picture, Buffalo has to be viewed as one of the best because of Allen and because of their offensive capability primarily. And I think when we look at the schedule, again, regardless of what happens against the Cowboys, you look at those final 3 games, all AFC games, and of course, 2 divisional games with the Patriots and the Dolphins. But we see the disaster that is the Chargers, who now will have a new coach, an interim coach, when these teams play, when the Bills play them. And I just can't look at any of those teams, the Chargers, Patriots, or Dolphins, and say, yeah, this is going to be really tough. Of course, 2 of those are on the road, LA and Miami, but I think the Bills are a different team than the one that we saw that fell to that wobbly, if not off the rails point after winning 3 of their first 4. This is a different club now. They have, I don't know if they've reinvented themselves. In some ways they have offensively, certainly the way Joe Brady is doing things as offensive coordinator. And I'm stunned by how well that has worked out. That change in season has worked out so well. And I also think Sean McDermott's coaching of this defense, which has drawn criticism for the inability to close out some games, but I still think it's done more good in the sense of overcoming some of the injuries there. I think they're well positioned. Again, if that injury list gets longer and it continues to grow, I guess, sure, you could have doubts about how they could survive. But as long as number 17 is still there behind center, I just don't see a reason to count them out of anything. And in my mind, I fully expect them to get through this stretch as a team that makes it into the postseason.
And Vic, you made a good point. A lot of the times the teams that maybe start the strongest, they don't always end that way. I mean, you can take a look at what the Eagles are going through right now. You would imagine, I mean, they've got the best record for however many weeks straight into last season, and now they're hitting the part of the season that matters most, and something's not clicking. So, sometimes that's all it takes, is for a team to get on the same page at this point where it's a push into the postseason.
Absolutely. I was going to say it's so you make such a great point about that too, because of the timing. December football, there is something about it. And why do people talk about it in those hallowed terms? Well, it's because, number one, of course, it's the push. It's the thing. It's the place where you have to have the most success. Show me a great team or a team that has a legacy of success, and I'll show you a team that wins in December, because those are those crucial games. But it's a mindset. It's also about health, but it's about pushing through. Even if your name isn't on the injury list, you're hurting. Players are hurting. And mentally, for players and coaches, you're worn down now. And there is almost nothing from a strategic standpoint that your opposition hasn't seen about you. They have the fullest book on you at this point of the year. And it gets much, much harder to use scheming to give yourself success. This is now about digging down, digging deep, and playing well. And from a coaching standpoint, also having that same stamina. And sometimes it gets to be a bit too much. And the younger players on your roster, the rookies that aren't used to playing a season that goes this long, this is when they hit that wall. It's a real wall that they hit, but sometimes veterans hit it too. And it's just about how persistent can you be? How driven can you be? How hungry can you stay? Okay. You know how much money you're getting in your contract. Your salary is going to basically be the same. You are chasing a bit more money in the postseason, of course, but that isn't what's driving now. It's the, do I want this so much and want it more than the other guy?
And I think too, after kind of starting the season the way that it did, they have this chip on their shoulder, right? Like nobody thought we'd be here. Everyone doubted us out, said end the season, this, that, things like that. Just like the Sean McDermott comments, where everybody's focus is negative on the outside, things like that tend to bring guys together in the locker room. So, just to end our conversation here, Vic, I just wanted to also touch on. You mentioned the Dolphins. Obviously, that's Dolphins Bills Week 18 game. But the Dolphins just made the AFC East race much tighter than I think we had all imagined as well after losing to the Titans and Will Levis on, I believe that was Monday night. And I know everyone will take what they can get, wild card, AFC East, but it's very much still a possibility for the Bills to take. The Dolphins have the Jets, they've got the Cowboys, Ravens, and then the Bills. So a pretty tough schedule for them. And it really might come down to that Week 18 game, Bills and Dolphins. So what's your take on that, and just kind of where the Bills stand, their possibility to take the AFC East?
The door is wide open for the Bills to win the division again. The Dolphins just left it open. They squandered the best opportunity they could have in that loss to the Titans and blowing that 14-point lead at the end. You just don't do that. And in this time of year, this is when you're supposed to step up and prevent those things from happening, or take advantage when they're gifted to you, as that game was at the end. They are questioning themselves. I don't think there's any doubt about it. They have questions about how they're doing things, what they're doing, and there are the Bills right on their tail. And I think it's going to be extremely tough for them to survive this. And looking at these stretch of games, there's not a single game I look at that say, yeah, that's an automatic win for the Dolphins. And then you get down to that last game, and it could easily be the one where the division is on the line.
And like we said, this is a pure and prime example of what maybe one team that's falling off the tracks at the wrong time, and one team that is finding their way right at the right time. So, all right, that's about all I have for us today, Vic. But again, I'm sure we will be back next Friday with a little bit of a better idea of the Bills' postseason chances. But for now, the Bills host the Cowboys on Sunday over at Highmark Stadium, kickoff at 4:25. For Vic Carucci, I'm Lindsey Moppert, and we'll see you back here on Friday.